Recently, LA experienced some of the worst fires in its history, many of which are still ongoing as I record this on January 20th. A lot of people have seen the footage of entire neighborhoods that were completely wiped out in the Palisades and Malibu. At the same time, to the east side of the LA basin, the Etruria fire broke out in the region of Altadena and Pasadena, incinerating many neighborhoods there as well and consuming some very beautiful natural spaces. So far, around 25 people are confirmed to have died in these fires, though it is possible that that number may continue to rise as investigations continue. Obviously, my sympathy goes out to all those people who lost their homes or loved ones. I almost want to apologize for making a video about how the fires threatened museums and art in light of the depth of grief that many people are feeling from these fires right now. And yet, if the fires had consumed the museums and their collections, I shudder to think of the sheer volume of our shared cultural heritage that would have been lost. The two museums in question are the Getty Center and the Getty Villa. Luckily, neither museum was destroyed, though the villa grounds were singed around the edges. However, since almost every other structure around the Getty Villa was incinerated, it may seem like a miracle that the museum was spared. How did the Getty Villa manage to escape the destruction of the worst fire in LA's history? In this video, I'll examine how they did it. There are lessons in the strategies the Getty used that the rest of California would be wise to pay attention to. But first, I want to talk about the differences between the Getty Villa and the Getty Center. While the fires were raging, I saw multiple news anchors mix up those two museums, calling the Getty Villa the center and the center the villa. For instance, this ABC clip shows an image of the iconic Getty Center while they're talking about the Getty Villa, which not only isn't on the same, it's not the same museum, it's not even on the same grounds. It's like many miles away. It takes minimum 30 minutes to drive there, but usually more with the LA traffic. Granted, both museums are sort of included as a single entity technically because they're both part of the Getty collection. At any rate, I love both of these museums. They're amazing for different reasons, and let's look at each one of them real quick so that you've got a clear idea. The Getty Villa is in the Pacific Palisades on the Malibu coast. It was opened in 1974 and was built as a reconstruction of the Villa of the Papyri, an ancient Roman house at Herculaneum. Like Pompeii, Herculaneum was buried by ash and rubble when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD. The preservation of many buildings at that site allows for a fairly accurate reconstruction. However, the Getty Villa also pulls in some inspiration from other ancient Roman estates as well. This museum is dedicated to ancient art and houses some 44,000 examples of Greek, Roman, and Etruscan artworks, as well as some examples from the Neolithic Cycladic culture. Okay, so you guys are probably getting a good idea of why I was so worried about this location. It's got a ton of stuff, and if you love ancient art as much as I do, well, you can see why it was terrifying to think of all of this being burned. Just an interesting little side note here. Over this last summer, the Getty Villa had an exhibit called Picture Worlds, which featured painted vases from Mayan, Moche, and Greek cultures. So I went there and took a lot of photos, planning to actually make a video about it on this channel because I found it a really interesting idea to compare and juxtapose the similarities and differences in these three different cultures and the ways that they depicted narrative and myth on painted ceramics. So anyway, I decided, I guess there's no time like the present to make that video. I'm going to go ahead and make it soon. So look out for that video. It should be coming out soon, hopefully. Okay, so now for the Getty Center. The Getty Center is quite a different beast. Whereas the villa is nestled in a gorgeous little canyon filled with Mediterranean trees and shrubbery, the Getty Center sits atop a hill, crowning that hill like a glistening white marble castle overlooking the entire LA basin. And whereas the villa is designed to look ancient, the center is obviously a modernist design. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I usually don't like modernist architecture that much, but this is an exception. I think the entire complex is a work of genius, every bit as artistic as the artworks it was built to house. It was designed by the architect Richard Meyer and opened to the public in 1997. I will probably have to make a video just about this building complex one day because it really does deserve one. I could do a whole other video about the collection that it houses, which is focused on European art from the medieval period all the way through to the most early phase of what we call modern art, which is really kind of like realism, impressionism, and a bit of post-impressionism. But I mean, this collection is top-notch. It's got some of the biggest names in art history: Titian, Rembrandt, Rubens, Turner, Van Gogh. I mean, the list goes on and on. Honestly, I could make a lot more than one video about the contents of this museum. I could probably do quite a few videos. I could probably do almost endless videos on the contents of the Getty Center. There's so much there. But anyway, let's just recap. The Getty Villa is a museum on the Malibu coast with art from classical antiquity. The Getty Center is a museum on a hill in the Brentwood area overlooking the LA basin. Okay, now which one was in danger from the fire? Well, in truth, both. But at different times during the fire's life. The Getty Center is currently a little bit more threatened than the Getty Villa, although the Getty Villa was far more threatened at the peak of the fire. And I would say that was the more dire circumstance because the fire actually burned everything around the Getty Villa. And the Getty Villa and just a few other buildings were preserved. The fire actually did burn the perimeter of the Getty Villa Museum grounds. And like I said, it pretty much burned everything around the museum, but it never really got close to the Getty Center. It hasn't yet. And you can see that on this map. So the Getty Center was fairly close to the evacuation zone, but there's still a bit of space between the fire perimeter, the evacuation zone, and the Getty Center. But as you can see here, the Getty Villa was directly in the path of the burn area. And the main reason why the Getty Center was not in as much danger has to do with the direction of the winds. So by now, you've all probably heard of the Santa Anas, the hot, dry winds that blow from east to west from our inland deserts towards the coast. When I was a kid growing up in Southern California, these were mostly just a nuisance in the early autumn months. Nobody likes to have like hot, dry air blown at them, right? So, I mean, that was how I thought of it, was a nuisance. But I'm sure they always exacerbated the fire risk, but it wasn't until these last couple decades that the fires have been getting worse and these Santa Anas have become such a huge factor in fanning the flames more than ever before. So the Santa Anas that we just experienced a couple of weeks ago when these fires started, they were some of the worst Santa Anas that I've ever seen in all my life living in California. They were blowing at near hurricane levels. Some of the winds were clocked at almost 100 miles per hour. So you can imagine whatever was downwind of those fires was in danger, and whatever was upwind of them was not in quite as much danger, since the embers were all forcefully blown westwards. And as you can see, the Getty Center was east of the fire, and so all of those embers and all of those flames were being forcefully blown westwards directly towards the Getty Villa. So how did the Getty Villa manage to protect itself and its priceless art collection when virtually everything around it burned to the ground? First off, you have to realize that the Getty Villa, although it is older than the Getty Center, being built again in the 1970s, still was constructed with fires in mind. Fires have always been a problem in California, especially in Southern California. They have gotten worse over my lifetime. I definitely can recall, if I look back over my entire life, that there were less fires, but there still have always been fires in California. It's always been a problem. We've always had a dry climate for as long as we have historical records here. So definitely when they were constructing the Getty Villa in the 70s, they had this in mind and they used fire-resistant materials. I'm sure that over the years, as sort of the science around fire mitigation and management and prevention has gotten more sophisticated, they've probably stepped up their game. But anyway, I listened to a podcast by ArtNet that interviewed Catherine E. Fleming, who is the CEO and president of the J. Paul Getty Trust, and she gave the following kind of list of things that the Getty Villa did and does as a sort of their standard protocol to resist fires. She said that as soon as the Getty, and I imagine this is the Getty Center and the Getty Villa, as soon as the Getty gets a red flag warning, that red flag warning, by the way, in California is just kind of like the highest danger alert of fire danger. As soon as they get the red flag warning, they begin to kind of douse the grounds with water. So just letting the sprinklers loose and trying to get everything damp and moist and wet because that's sort of the first order of defense. And she said they also have on the Getty Villa grounds their own sort of storage for water. So they've probably, I don't know if they have underground cisterns or above ground kind of tanks of water, but they have some sort of water collection and storage there. Also, not sure if it's gray water, that is like, rainwater runoff that's collected. There's a lot of sophisticated ways of collecting gray water to use for gardening, or some combination of that and water that they, store through other means. But that definitely seems to be a big part is, what they call irrigation, or just, basically dousing everything in water with sprinklers. I did listen to quite a few other examples of people who were able to save their homes, and that seems to be a common thread, that people with like sort of sprinkler systems that they were able to sort of just like let loose. In some cases, people would let their turn their sprinklers on and then just get out of Dodge, just evacuate. And in other cases, some people actually stayed beyond the evacuation order, put their lives in jeopardy in order to try to fight the fire themselves with garden hoses and things like that. And in some cases, that actually worked. However, that's a huge risk to take. Now, Catherine Fleming did say that there were some people who had to get off of the Getty Villa grounds immediately upon learning that the fire had broken out, and some people who stayed. Now, I don't know if they stayed throughout the duration of the fire. That would be a very interesting question. I don't know the legality of that. They maybe they can't admit that they had some people who stayed there to actually fight the fire from on the grounds. I really don't know. She didn't specify as to whether there or not there were people actually on the grounds as the fire came down, putting out hot spots and whatnot. But I kind of suspected that there may have been. And I think the concern would probably be not wanting to encourage other people, homeowners, to do a similar thing because it's extremely risky. 25 people have lost their lives in this fire. There have been some other fires in recent years. One that comes to mind is the Paradise Fire that claimed even more lives. And a lot of times people who think that they can fight off a fire might not be able to, and they might burn to death in their building as they're trying to protect it. Okay, so we've got fire-resistant materials that the buildings are supposedly constructed out of. We've got the irrigation, dousing the grounds with water. But this third thing is in some sense the primary thing, which, I probably should have said first, because I think that it is at least as important, probably not more important than dousing the grounds in water, but at least as important, and that is clearing away the brush. So Fleming mentioned the groundskeepers and the gardeners as people who were just did so much to contribute to the protection of the museum by ensuring that there was no kind of close to the ground kind of brush, things that could ignite. And this is a real big deal in Southern California. But before I talk about the particular kinds of shrubs that make Southern California so easy to ignite, I do want to mention a couple other things that that Fleming was talking about that they did for the Getty Villa, which is apparently they have the ability to seal off, just basically seal it kind of almost airtight, and to have the air switch from drawing in outside air to just kind of circulating the air that's inside, and that prevented the smoke and ash from getting into the actual museum. So inside of the actual museum, she said it's just pristinely clean. None of the smoke or ash got inside the actual museum where the art is stored. So that's pretty cool. You know what? This video is long enough. I think I want to stop it here and make another video that goes a little more into depth about the different types of brush that California has that can ignite these fires, that gets them going really bad, and what the Getty has done to mitigate that while still having very beautiful landscaping. But I gotta say, I'm not in a very good mood right now. It is January 20th. Which means we're about 13 days out from the start of the Pacific Palisades Fire and the Eaton fires. And the Santa Ana winds just kicked up while I've been recording this. So we've got more Santa Ana winds coming in today. Somebody, an arsonist, lit a fire, a brand new fire in Griffith Park near the Griffith Observatory in Los Angeles. And I'm just kind of in a bad mood. Now, that fire was put out immediately. The firefighters were right on top of it, and that's awesome. And I think they're looking for the arsonist. But this topic obviously hits home for me because I live in Southern California, and this is something we have to deal with every year, increasingly worse and worse. I've got a lot of feelings wrapped up in this issue, not the least of which involves, I was talking about the native flora, our kind of native scrubland. It's a scrub brush habitat. It's called chaparral, and different other kinds of habitat we have here. And there's a lot to talk about. I hope I can make a video about it that doesn't stray too far from art, since that is the primary focus on this channel. But let's see how it goes. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton, and I really appreciate it if you do. My channel is not monetized, but I do have a book you can buy, and it's called Thoughts. If you want to find it, just look up Brian D.K. Thoughts on Amazon, but make sure you have books selected when you search Brian D.K. Thoughts, otherwise it won't show up. It has around 150 illustrations. It took me about 10 years to make it, and it really is just a collection of random thoughts, thoughts on many different subjects, ranging from mortality, romance, quasi-philosophical issues. It's full of my art, so if you're interested in seeing my own drawings, then there's many examples in this book. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and ciao for now.